You don't often hear people wish that they could completely erase a game from their memory, just to recapture the experience of a first playthrough. Yet that's one of the most common sentiments I hear about The Outer Wilds. It's a good game with plenty of things that mark it as such, but just listing those off doesn't fully capture why some people hold it so dear. They speak with this palpable sense of connection, a deep care that seems a bit out of place with talking about a video game. But venturing out into its solar system and solving the grand mystery does feel like a personal journey, more so than in many other games. I think one interesting way it forges that connection is the way your understanding is constantly toyed with. That's both in how you understand stuff actually happening at the surface level and the deeper thematic stuff going on below it. Asking, what is this game about? Again, both literally and thematically, will have you answering completely differently depending on how far you are into the game. Like at the beginning of my journey, I thought the game was going to be all about the joys of unrestrained curiosity. You wake in a town that seems structured around scientific discovery, with more space dedicated to experiments and technology than housing. That could be clinical and cold, but there's a warmth to it thanks to the goofy looking inhabitants and the coziness of the whole setup. All the technology has this DIY feel to it, with spaceships cobbled together with wood and rope as much as metal and glass. Everyone wishes you well and hopes that you come back with some good stories to share with them, creating this infectious air of excitement. It made me think of at-home science projects, like kids in the back garden creating and playing around with stuff they don't understand, just because it makes them smile. Some of this comfort even manages to seep into the vastness of space thanks to travellers that left home before you, each now scattered throughout the solar system and playing the same tune on different instruments. Space soundscapes are typically impersonal, dominated by synths and other electronic sounds. We all appear equally insignificant before the vast nothingness of space and all that. But here, you've got all these acoustic melodies of a shared song, a connection across these vast distances that act as beacons guiding you towards familiarity. Cosmic indifference is replaced with something a bit more human. The unique mechanics of each planet always make exploring and discovery fun. It's not often a game messes with your basic movement whenever you visit a new location. You're always encouraged to be curious and experiment with what you see, and it's rare to figure something out before first messing around with it a bit. All these elements led me to the understanding that this was a game about having fun, about how the innate human qualities of curiosity and a desire to figure things out can lead to joy, how the act of learning and understanding something new can just make you smile. Then the sun exploded and everything died. This was the first upheaval of my understanding. Death thankfully triggers a time loop, offering a chance to figure out what causes the sun to explode, stop it, and save the solar system. So it's not just about playing around and having fun for the hell of it. There is a clear and high-stakes goal to strive for. And while a sudden annihilation at the end of each loop contrasts the doughy positivity of everything else, I still clung to the idea that in the end, everything would circle back towards a lighter tone. That didn't last long. I found many of the puzzles fun because of how physical they were. Like, instead of activating something by just pressing a button on your controller, you have to physically look and pull parts around. But that physicality is also extended mercilessly to your character. Once I was on an island minding my own business when a rogue tornado jettisoned everything into space. Silence replaced all the chaos of the raging sea, and suddenly I'm freely floating around where I'd just been walking in this unexpectedly beautiful moment. Until the island fell back towards the planet and the sudden gravity increase splattered me against the floor. Being crushed, running out of breathable air, flying into the sun, there's plenty of gruesome ways to die. You can't press pause and reset the loop through a quick button press either, leading to morbid occasions where I'd get separated from my ship or some similar screw up and have to figure out the quickest way to die to start over. But the best way I can describe this shifting understanding is in how I came to think about the Nomai, the extinct aliens responsible for the structures and technology now lying ruined throughout the system. The only other trace of them is their skeletons and their writings, often scrawled across large surfaces. The decision that they write directly onto the walls for all to see is, from a design perspective, a clever way of communicating to the player without needing to spend money on hours of voice acting. But in a game that encourages you to connect the dots and think about what you're seeing, it ends up informing how you think about their culture. These writings aren't hidden away in dusty books but placed right in the open. readable to any and all who happen to walk by. Presumably, their authors did this so that they could be easily seen by as many other people as possible, which is a revealing intent. Take, for example, the first emperor of Rome, Augustus, who inscribed a description of his life and accomplishments on a monument in modern Turkey for all to see. When translated, there's almost 2 modern pages worth dedicated to his military conquests, barely anything about his political reforms, and nothing about his family. Without even reading any of the content, you can already start working out what he wanted the masses to remember him for, and so presumably what sorts of values were important to the culture. In the game, I applied that same thought exercise to the Nomai. Almost all their writings are related to scientific research and discovery, which makes sense since you, the player, need that information to solve the mystery. Personal anecdotes are often blended in. A section that begins with an update on a research project might sneak in a few references to how someone's settling into their new home. These often branch away from the central point in smaller and smaller circles, making them feel subordinate to the main point of the writing. That these are the most common public-facing records, almost always concerned with research and passing on knowledge, paint a picture of a culture where curiosity and a desire to reach greater understanding are a hugely important part of life. The presence of the more personal writings implied to me that this central driving force is so strong it's become intertwined with every facet of living. Early on, I thought the game was about celebrating curiosity, and the Nomai seem to represent what happens when you truly embrace and prioritize that. I mean, look at all the cool stuff they did. But of course, learning more began to change that impression, and I began to think I'd understood it all wrong. It's clear from the beginning that their technology is somehow responsible for the time loop, but learning exactly how cast a shadow over all their accomplishments. Sending something back in time needed a massive amount of energy, and the Nomai decided the only way was to cause and then harness the power of a supernova. More shocking is that time travel doesn't seem to have been something they needed for survival. They just figured they might be able to do it and wanted to see how far they could take it. Their insatiable need for more understanding seems to have doomed you, your friends, and your home to complete annihilation, with only dumb luck having given you the chance to undo their plan. They built a station orbiting the sun to trigger the explosion, so your understanding of what to do finally becomes crystal clear. Reach the sun station, stop it from firing, and save the solar system. By this point, I'd been wrong in one major way. I thought the game was about celebrating curiosity, while these revelations seemed to reframe it instead to be about the dangers it could bring. My new conclusion was that the underlying themes were similar to the myth of Pandora and her box. All the signs seemed to be there: the initial joy of curiosity, followed by the devastating lesson of the curses it can unleash. So, onwards to the sun station, to save the solar system, learn the moral lesson, and beat the game. Only, you already know that's not what happens. Records tell you the station did fire into the sun, almost 300,000 years ago. It had no effect, and the Nomai died out before getting the chance to try anything else. They're not responsible for the death of the star. No one is. It's just that no star can burn forever. And it's not just this solar system. The entire universe is reaching the end of its natural lifespan. There's no one at fault, and there's nothing to fix. Any confidence I had about my own understanding seemed utterly annihilated. I was able to accept I jumped to a conclusion about a theme, but this was a misunderstanding on an entirely different scale. The literal goal I was chasing won't save anyone. Unrestrained curiosity in the pursuit of understanding didn't doom anything. What was the game really about, and what was I supposed to do now? Ultimately, you can only carry on, but with a shift in thinking. Beyond this point, I was far more open to everything. I would try to understand new information from multiple perspectives, not just trying to fit it into my pre-existing ideas about what was happening. Still, the game had one more shock to knock me into realizing I wasn't nearly as open as I thought I was. That came with the discovery of a living, breathing Nomai. Talking to it gets no response. Instead, they programmed text into a device and then projected it onto a nearby wall. This happens quickly, but it floored me because it prompted a question I hadn't even thought to ask. Can they not speak out loud? All the while, I'd assumed they'd written everything down to share and prolong their knowledge into the future, to leave something behind after they faded away. But what if this whole time they were just chatting? What if they had no voices to communicate these ideas out loud, and they wrote all this stuff down just to share, one being to another, in a single moment? I'd assumed intent, formed an idea of how they thought and what they valued, believed I'd come to understand them, and 2 seconds with the living one had completely shattered it all. While writing the script, I realised that in one recording, a nomai asks another if they can hear them, and the other replies yes, although their voice is faint. Had I not made this video, I likely never would have realised this, but it serves as a good example of how the game presents information. Everything has been crafted in such a way that you're likely to draw certain conclusions. At some point, I think most players will have suspected that the supernova is caused by the sun station, but it's delivered in a subtle way that feels as if you've come to that conclusion all on your own. Important clues are recorded in your ship's log, but they're written in a very clinical, matter-of-fact way. They tend to present the facts as is with little interpretation, and while that obviously guides you, the little bit of extra legwork you do to connect those dots makes each conclusion feel more personal, more like you yourself have actually put in the work and figured something out. This style also means that throughout the game you're left to chase these red herrings and repeatedly misunderstand things and reach wrong conclusions. Even when I'd found almost every clue needed to finish the game, there was no feedback telling me so, though by that point I'd stopped looking for guidance and confirmation. All the supposed understanding and smart ideas being blown apart repeatedly had left me open to look at everything from different perspectives. Going into the ending, I had multiple ideas and interpretations existing in my head simultaneously, and these were only multiplied thanks to how trippy that ending is. Quantum shenanigans mean that what you see is likely not literally real. I'm fairly confident the final act causes a big bang and starts a new universe, but much of what happens is vague enough that you could come up with more than one believable interpretation. What does it all mean? In the end, I think one reason people feel such a strong connection to the game is that, at this final narrative crescendo, you've been primed to actually want to answer that question. You've been constantly encouraged to be curious, to use your brain and mess around to try and come up with the right conclusions. But those are repeatedly proven wrong, completely upturned, or just become irrelevant in the face of new information. And the way that new information is communicated to you is often quick, making each revelation feel far more forceful. And what's more, that the game is so hands-off makes these conclusions feel like your own. You're not watching some detective chase the wrong lead. You yourself, through no outright manipulation, decided to follow that wrong path. All this forces you to approach everything with an open mind, to really look at it deeply and from different possible lines of inquiry. You ponder these possible meanings instead of immediately trying to construct a narrative. After all, the entire experience thus far tells you that not doing this will lead to false understandings. So you end at this place that clearly has a deeper meaning that it wants to tell you, and you listen. The story ends up being about something universally human and personal: death. All of us will eventually face it, and how you choose to react to that information can have a huge influence on how you live your life. It's a topic almost inseparable from our own experiences and concepts of self. So you're sat there in this open-minded state, being asked to interpret the meaning in a narrative covering this intensely personal subject matter, and you actually want to do it. I think one of the greatest achievements of the Outer Wilds isn't necessarily what is on that thematic layer, but that it manages to make so many people actively want to engage with it. The final result is that the answers you come up with feel uniquely yours. It means different people will answer what is the Outer Wilds about in different ways. That understanding feels strong, solid, meaningful. And when something leaves you feeling like that, why would you not tell everyone how special it is?